What is up there, beautiful people, and welcome to another edition of Just Trending You. So today we're going to be speaking everything that's related to the 15-year-old Zimbabwean teenage girl that is requiring urgent medical treatment in South Africa to the tune of 1.5 million rand. So I'm going to be reading from an article. It says, a 15-year-old Zimbabwean teenage girl with a life-threatening autoimmune disease has been told that she does not qualify for a liver transplant from a South African donor. Vanessa Mafu's desperate parents have now filed an urgent application at the Johannesburg High Court seeking to compel Charlotte Maxeke Hospital to perform the life-saving transplant, which would cost about 1.5 million South African rands. The parents said they are prepared to meet the cost. Vanessa's father, Vuyelwa Ncube, says in an affidavit that doctors treating his daughter advised that she has autoimmune hepatitis, which has now caused liver cirrhosis. The family was advised of their options. They could receive a liver from a donor who has died and there's a consent for organ transplants for medical purposes, or she could get a portion of a liver from a donor who is alive, usually a family member. But there was bad news. The doctors told Ncube that there is a national priority list for recipients of an organ from a donor and that Zimbabwean nationals are not eligible to receive an organ from a deceased South African donor. Ncube had to have a valid visa or work permit for her daughter to be added to the priority list. Ncube will tell the High Court during the urgent hearing expected within days that he applied for an extension of his expired work permit and is awaiting the outcome. The delays in the processing of my documents are not my own, but could have fatal consequences for my daughter, he says in his affidavit. Even then, he says he has legal advice that his status in the country does not preclude the hospital from its obligations, which require them to preserve my daughter's life. He added, I was not provided with any written laws that preclude a Zimbabwean national from receiving a liver transplant from a deceased South African. South African donor or a donor of another nationality. The family's lawyer advocate Simba Chidando said Vanessa's situation is extremely urgent because it is a life-saving procedure, but it is also one of the most cruel, inhumane, and blatantly xenophobic acts perpetuated by the state against a child. It is symbolic of the fact that South Africa has lost its moral, legal, and pan-African compass. My clients remain defiant under the circumstances, and the legal team I'm pleading will do everything in our power to save this young girl, I assume. Okay, so I'm just going to be reading from a couple of tweets here on Twitter that are under this post. The first person says he is not blatantly blaming RSA. He is stating the law. What does the law say about foreigners and healthcare? Law allows foreigners to be given healthcare as well. So why set the law and break it? Okay. Another person says we don't have non-South Africans looking for anything in Zimbabwe, but they'll be trying to pass Limpopo River with crocodiles to overwhelm the country who want to cater to its own citizens. Another person says, besides South Africa going to seek healthcare in Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe made a public statement to say no foreigner is going to receive free medical treatment in their country, with the same Zims applauding it. Okay. Another person says there is no war in Zimbabwe. Let her go home for medical care. They're busy supporting M23 against us. I don't think that's proven. And now we must remain the stupid nation that helps illegals. Go to DRC and they will help you, agent. Another person says I'm assuming this person meant to say, these are the things they should be fighting for in their country to improve their own country. Now, because we're supporting them and housing some of them in our RDPs, in our backyards, and our land, they think we are stupid. Down with these people, let them go home, okay? Another person says, we must keep a close eye on this because if she gets a liver, that means a South African was bumped down the list and did not get what they wanted, leading to a certain death, okay? Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is basically what I wanted to report to you about today. Whew, wow, it's really a heavy situation. We are dealing with a very young girl here, a 15-year-old girl. According to the article, the father was in possession of a valid work permit, or valid work permit. And he's not really in possession of a valid work permit because he was set to update his documents, and it seems as if there's a delay in updating the document. Also, obviously, we do know what the constitution says. It says the South African Constitution, section 27 number 1, states that everyone has the right to have access to healthcare services, including reproductive health care, and that no one may be refused emergency medical treatment. This is something that I saw on Google, which is, a quote from the South African Constitution. So it's crazy. It really is crazy, because I think, for me, in terms of the Constitution, I think there are a lot of things, a lot of loopholes in the Constitution, in my personal opinion, that actually work to the detriment of, South African citizens. I think in cases like this, we do see that, this is obviously, in my personal opinion, that, the Constitution grants certain freedoms to people and to everybody and to all people living in South Africa, and that can be detrimental to us, as South African citizens. In terms of Charlotte Maxeke denying medical treatment to this girl, they said that, in terms of them denying her medical treatment, that it's because there's a law that states that no foreigner may receive, a donor, an organ from a South African deceased donor. And I think, that's basically what the hospital is trying to, or the law that the host hospital is trying to upkeep. But also, I think another thing that's very important for us to note is that there is a priority list, of people who are waiting, South Africans who are waiting for organs from these donors, deceased or alive. There's a long list of people, and I think I read it in one of the tweets, that if this girl does receive a donor, it means that a South African citizen was bumped down the list so that they could sort of handle her or give her preferential treatment in order for her to get this donor. So it's really a tricky situation, and I hope that it receives a lot of coverage, because this situation will tell us what's really going on in our healthcare system. I believe it was last week or 2 weeks ago, the minister, or people did come out to say that the South African healthcare system is incredibly burdened by the amount of foreign nationals that are relying on public healthcare, the same public healthcare that's supposed to be for South African citizens, So it's honestly such a mess. It honestly is such a mess. When we have porous borders, when we have people who are influxing into the country, it not only affects employment rates, but it also affects healthcare. And unfortunately, it affects the people who cannot, afford to get themselves private treatment, the people who are reliant on state resources the most. The elites, they have themselves covered because they can just go to private hospitals because they've got medical aid. But in terms of the people who are heavily dependent on state resources, it really, really, really is a mess. But anyways, I don't want to ramble on too much about this. Tell me what you think about in the comments section. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next upload.